Welcome to 1979, a year that shocked the nation.
There was a sense that I was watching something a little bit naughty.
When politics turned deadly.
Jeremy Thorpe allegedly tried to have this bloke killed.
Our TV screens steamed up.
They had suspenders on, there was girl-on-girl action, things that you just did not see on television.
And national treasures starred in X-rated movies.
Dame Helen Mirren and Boobies and Balls.
It was the year we found out the Queen had been harbouring a KGB spy, allegedly.
The Anthony Blunt revelations really stunned the whole nation.
The year that Monty Python were very naughty boys.
That this is such a 10th-rate film that I don't believe that it would disturb
Yes, I know you started with an open mind, I realise that.
And the year Britain's rudest comic was launched.
I think we've lowered standards in society generally.
These are the jaw-dropping moments that tested a nation's morality.
I love when people push things too far.
Silly mate, I mean, really, look at that.
And in doing so, shaped the world we know today.
It was a shock. I think everybody was taken aback.
So, set your faces to stunned as we gasp all over again at how TV, films, showbiz and politics were so controversially 1979.
I'm scared, like I am genuinely actually scared.
Shake your collective booties. It's 1979, when Labour were crushed under Mrs T's Tory landslide.
Margaret Thatcher is now the Prime Minister of Great Britain with an overall majority.
A Conservative government headed by the Western world's first woman Prime Minister.
The year Trevor Francis made footballing history when he ka-chinged to Nottingham Forest.
A small army of loyal fans and pressmen turned out to cheer Britain's first million-pound footballer into Nottingham.
And then...
We are three wise men.
Well, what are you doing creeping around a car shed at 2 o'clock in the morning? That doesn't sound very wise to me.
It's a film that still is talked about in hushed tones by some people. It's still quite a naughty film.
We wish to praise the infant. We must pay homage to him.
Homage? You're all drunk. It's disgusting.
Life of Brian. It was clearly a satire. It's established right at the top of the film that this is a ordinary person who is elevated to the status of a messiah.
By what name are you calling him?
Brian!
You watch Life of Brian, and for me, the main thing is it's very funny.
Remember, this was the morally and literally conservative 1979. And while Life of Brian's considered a classic today, back then it faced being cast into film purgatory, never to see the light of day.
They're in Tunisia. They're about to start shooting. The powers that be at EMI, who are funding the film, were about to pull the plug because they finally read the script. It's like, no, we can't do this whatsoever. What will our shareholders say?
But then, lo, a Beatle did cast a financial miracle, and the Pythons saw it was good.
George Harrison, who's kind of a mate of theirs, and particularly of Eric Idle, discovers that this is happening, and he says, no, I want to see this film. So George mortgages his house in Henley and borrows more money, £2.5 million, and puts it into the film. And it was like, as he said, it was the most expensive cinema ticket he's ever bought. George Harrison did get all his money back and a lot more.
Verbatim from stuff he's supposed to have said in the Bible.
How blessed are the sorrowful. They shall find consolation.
It's not an attack on Christ, and it's not an attack on the concept of religion generally. It's an attack on the way different religious groups complain and interact with one another about what the message is.
Yeah. What was that?
Really, Christ is in the film, he's doing his speech, and already, before he's even finished his sermon, people are fighting over what he said and what he meant.
Well, obviously, it's not meant to be taken literally. It refers to any manufacturers of dairy products.
They were satirists, so they thought that's a great target. A comedian's job is to prick that bubble of pomposity and just highlight...
Very silly humour, but a lot of edgy humour too. They were making a point.
It was a point that was lost on the film's detractors, many of whom took great offence. Not that they'd actually seen it, of course.
My RE teacher was actually arrested outside my local cinema in Basingstoke, Hampshire, picketing before the film was even shown, when the posters went up. He was out there saying, "This is a disgrace, we can't show this."
There was much more opposition than I think there would be today. In the 60s and 70s, there had been a reassertion of Christian values. Mary Whitehouse had had her campaign against, blasphemy on television. And so when Life of Brian came out, they were organised and they were telling people, through the pulpits to write to your MP. They were telling churchgoers to protest.
The film was making headlines before it was even released. 39 local authorities in the UK either imposed an outright ban or slapped an X certificate on it. People demanded a metaphorical public stoning, so John Cleese and Michael Palin found themselves on a live TV debate with devout Christian Malcolm Muggeridge and the Bishop of Southwark.
Malcolm Muggeridge was a sort of a pontificator on social morals and a very intelligent man, and you can almost see the respect for Muggeridge dying in Michael Palin's eyes as he keeps on and on about it.
All that is true, and all you've done is to make a lot of people on a cross singing a music hall song. I mean, it's so disgusting when you think of it.
A lot of people go away very happy, laughing at that, their faith not touched one jot.
I don't think it'll touch your faith. I don't think it will.
You take comedy too seriously at your own peril. And, he's just got egg on his face there.
You have succeeded in reducing something which has inspired the greatest art into something which is presented in terms of the lowest art. That's your feat. That's your
set up your own terms that we have to influence people. We're not saying we want to influence people. We're trying to make them laugh.
Well, you'll get your 30 pieces. You'll get your 30 pieces of silver. I'm quite sure.
I mean, when you look back, it's just so ridiculous. The religious guys look just so stuffy and pompous. And we were all with Michael Palin and John Cleese, and you're cheering us, yes, go for it, because they made such fools of them, really.
But the Python's critics merely fanned the flames of publicity, and The Life of Brian became a box office smash, grossing nearly $20 million in North America alone. Not bad for a film made for just $4 million.
The queues are outside the cinema for miles. You ban anything, or you try and ban anything, or you make out something is controversial, people queue up to see it.
Yes, we all love a bit of juicy controversy, don't we? And trust me, there's plenty more juice to be squeezed from 1979, including the politician and a murder plot gone tragically wrong.
This is one of the most bizarre political stories ever.
And when Bowie's daring drag left Top of the Pops viewers open-mouthed.
So you're saying that the lady is a man? Outrageous, disgusting.
1979 was a smorgasbord of scandal, with controversial rock stars, comedians, and even dancers. But politicians weren't going to be left out of all the fun. So we're heading over to that bastion of morality, Westminster, for one of its most dramatic controversies. And let's face it, it's had a few. Time to tick off the juicy elements. There's a married MP, a vengeful gay lover, an amateur assassin who looks like one, and a Great Dane in the wrong place at the wrong time. With a lineup like that, the story was begging to be dramatised. And in 2018, the whole sorry saga became a very British scandal, starring Hugh Grant and Ben Whishaw.
This is one of the most bizarre political stories ever. Jeremy Thorpe was the leader of the Liberal Party. He had had an homosexual affair in the 60s with a guy called Norman Scott, when homosexuality was still illegal.
Come on.
In those days, it was very, very difficult to be a homosexual. He was married, and he was obviously very unhappy by having a marriage of convenience, let's say, and not being able to be himself, which he needed to be if he was going to be a good politician.
Thorpe thought his gay affair of the 60s was buried in the past, and therefore no threat to his blooming political career. But as the saying famously goes, hell hath no fury like a vindictive male model turned horse trainer scorned.
I just, said I wanted it all to finish,
And he said that a great friend of his was the Director of Public Prosecutions, and I couldn't harm him in any way. And that made me very unhappy and very angry, because I felt that our relationship was just based on the fact that he would always be all right. And it didn't matter about me.
My husband's family were in North Devon. And Norman Scott would tell anybody, for a pint, the whole story about how Jeremy had been so unkind to him and so on. And he was regarded with, well, pity, I think.
Jeremy Thorpe must have realised that everything was now threatened. Everything about his life, everything about his career, everything about his apparently happy marriage. He must have known straight away that this could be the end.
In the 1974 general election, Thorpe took the Liberals to the brink of electoral dreamland, almost holding the balance of power in a hung parliament. But with Scott threatening to expose his secret, the story then took a dark and deadly turn.
Jeremy Thorpe allegedly tried to have this bloke killed. The gunman, Andrew Newton, drove Norman Scott across Exmoor, told him to get out of the car. Norman Scott had this Great Dane with him called Rinker. Andrew Newton shot the dog, and then his gun jammed, so he couldn't shoot Norman Scott, so the gunman fled. And when this all got into the papers, it's like, what the hell? And do you know what? I think the British people were most upset about the dog.
I remember people had T-shirts that said, "Remember Rinker."
A story that bizarre won't stay down for long, and by '76 the press were all over it, forcing Thorpe to resign as Liberal leader. He continued as an MP, but by 1979's general election, his political opponents smelled blood and started to circle.
When it came to the '79 election, Oberon Waugh, who wrote for Private Eye, he stood against Jeremy Thorpe in his North Devon constituency for the Dog Lovers Party, in memory of Rinker the dog.
Oberon Alexander Waugh, Dog Lovers Party, 79. 7-9.
One of the things that carries people into politics, and often to the top of politics, the leadership of a party, is a big ego.
And a crushing personal defeat there for Jeremy Thorpe. He's been MP for this constituency for 20 years.
If your ego is going to be punctured, it has to be done with real force. And that's what was happening.
Well, I can't say that I'm over the moon. Obviously, if you're in politics, you're prepared to win or to lose, and I've lost.
But he hadn't lost everything, not yet, anyway. Worse was to come as Thorpe and his alleged co-conspirators faced what the papers called the trial of the century at the Old Bailey in May '79.
The best-known defendant, Mr. Jeremy Thorpe, arrived with his wife Marion at a little before 10. There to see them were newsmen from all over the world.
After 15 hours of deliberations spread over 3 days, the jury delivered their verdicts just after lunch. They decided that the former Liberal leader was not guilty of conspiring to murder Norman Scott and not guilty of incitement to murder.
It was a real, to me, miscarriage of justice, because he was a man of a certain class and of a certain rank in politics. Everybody conspired that he should be got off.
When Mr. Thorpe emerged, he did so with all his old campaign style.
Many observers smelled a whiff of the old boys' club in court as Judge Sir Joseph Cantley sided with the establishment.
The judge summed up this case in the most biased manner possible, praising Jeremy Thorpe for his public service and his background and what a wonderful pillar of the establishment he was, and pouring scorn on this male model, this homosexual Norman Scott. Basically instructed the jury to find Jeremy Thorpe not guilty, which they duly did, to everyone's disbelief.
Although I have received many requests from the press and television for interviews and statements, I'm sure that they will understand that I now wish to have a short period of rest with my family, away from the glare of further publicity.
Are you going back to politics, Mr. Thorpe?
But while Thorpe's freedom was ensured by the verdict, his image didn't get off so easily. Being connected to one of the biggest controversies in British politics meant he never worked as an MP again.
Mr. Thorpe, how do you feel now? Mr. Thorpe, could you kiss your wife if you would for us, please?
Although he got off, he no longer had a reputation. And that, for a politician, is your flesh and blood. If you lose your reputation, you are nobody.
In 1979, homophobia was still rife in the world of politics. But in pop, a hint of sexual ambiguity could go a long way. David Bowie had controversially worked this out in the early 70s, and by 1979 he was ready to wade in again.
He was very beautiful. He looked great in ladies' leotards.
Oh, it's all right.
Is he a lady? Is he a man? Is he gay? Is he straight? Is he somewhere in between?
I used to be able to stop traffic quite easily by just walking down the street. No more than that, just because I had long hair.
In the 21st century, we'd call it queerness or being non-binary, but back in the day, there was no word for what David Bowie was.
Genius, maybe? Anyway, fast forward to 79 and Bowie was ready to start bending genders again with one of his most controversial singles.
Boys Keep Swinging was David Bowie's great anthem of gender, and it confused people.
But if the lyrics caused a stir, that was nothing compared to the song's video, directed by David Mallet.
I did a really straight video of him wearing a suit, singing Boys Keep Swinging. Terrific. Then David Bowie said, I think we're going to put a twist at the end of it. Sent off to BBC at Top of the Pops.
Meantime, the beat goes on for pop's most unpredictable man, David Bowie, and Boys Keep Swinging.
But the other two were pretty gorgeous, pretty iconic. Seeing someone who was visually representing sort of queer culture and things at a time when maybe it wasn't as prevalent, in my community down by not knowing about it. But I'll pop it on my Instagram story later.
You ain't seen nothing yet, Tia. We've got more jaw-dropping 1979 controversy coming your way. Johnny Rotten plays Mr. Nasty on a TV judging panel. Sid Vicious lives up to his surname.
This was a kid who couldn't cope, and he met someone who couldn't cope either.
And Britain's rudest comic is born.
Viz was naughty and rude, pushing the boundaries of what's OK to read in a comic.
When it came to controversy in music, the 70s will be remembered for one four-letter word, punk. At the helm of the good ship Outrage, John Lydon, a.k.a. Johnny Rotten, steered his crew of Sex Pistols into uncharted waters, influencing music, fashion, art and politics. But by 79, the Pistols had split.
The only people who seem to be surprised that punk rockers got the headlines has got to the punk rockers themselves.
And the establishment thought it had seen the last of Mr. J. Rotten Esquire. Wrong. He'd barely got started. Our first foray into Lydon mayhem comes from pop panel show Jukebox Jury. Revived by the BBC after 12 years off air. After this, I bet they wish it had stayed off air.
Jukebox Jury is a TV record review show, and they have a panel of 4 people each week. And this episode has Johnny Rotten, Joan Collins, Elaine Page, and DJ Fluff Freeman on it. So Johnny Rotten certainly stands out at this point as someone who may be more avant-garde than the rest.
That's The Jury, and this is record number 1.
John Lydon was always an innovator, and here he is giving a masterclass in nasty pop judging that I'm sure a young Simon Cowell was watching closely.
He does what he's going to do. You know, he slags off every record that's on there.
Rubbish. Oh, that ain't the Donna Summers I know. I hate it. It was awful. They're all so bad, these records. And they gave us a list beforehand.
Johnny Rotten is not going to do what you tell him.
What do you lot say? Mixed opinion.
And that's what's so glorious about seeing him on Jukebox Jury.
Of course, it all ends deliciously badly.
Stick your necks out and tell me whether you think it'll be a hit or a miss.
Hit. Throughout the show, John Lydon has said miss to every single record. He didn't like any of them. And the other panel members who really duly played the game are very annoyed about this.
Well, normally I wouldn't listen to it. It's patronising, rubbish. Blech.
So Fluff Freeman tells him off.
I don't like to be patronised, and that's what that record reeks of.
Shut up, will you?
No, I will not.
I think one of the great pithies on this particular record.
It's rubbish, full
in
stop.
Jukebox Julie.
Rubbish, miss.
And he walks off.
I hope Joan Collins and Elaine enjoyed themselves.
We're not talking about listeners.
And I hope it wasn't too exciting for Johnny Rotten, who seems to have taken the whole thing.
Good night.
He's gone off to a previous engagement.
I think more people should be like that on TV. I really do. I think there's too many smiley, happy people.
He does this show, Check It Out, with the whole group in Newcastle, and they would all have been drunk. I could guarantee this.
How the Sex Pistols was crap, and how Johnny Rotten has lost it.
Little scary eyes.
Sooner or later, somebody will open their eyes. Oh, sorry, rude word.
I don't know what they thought they were booking. I mean, if you get John Lydon, you know what I mean? He's going to tell you to fuck off, isn't he? You know what I mean?
Notable chapter in his catalogue of controversial TV appearances.
It was a great victory for youth culture at the time, because we just thought it was fucking brilliant, you know? Hey, he got on the telly and he swore.
John wasn't the only ex-Pistol to make controversial headlines in 1979. Across the Atlantic, his friend and former bandmate, Sid Vicious, was headed for tragedy. Vicious had joined the Pistols in February '77 and soon lived up to his provocative surname.
John Simon Ritchie, also known as Sid Vicious, was John Lydon, Johnny Rotten's best friend from college. He was brought in to replace Glenn Matlock, the bass player in the Sex Pistols. Sid couldn't really play, but he looked great, and he had a certain style about him.
Quickly, Vicious encapsulated the darker ethos of punk, its drug-taking, violence and nihilism.
His mother was a heroin addict, so he was not set up, in a sense, to protect himself and look after himself. He just went down the wrong path.
Waiting on that wrong path was notorious American groupie Nancy Spungen, who threw petrol on Sid's already out-of-control flames.
Once he started going out with Nancy, the hard drugs got in the equation, so he's in a downward spiral.
He and Nancy moved to New York. They're kind of like living in the Chelsea Hotel. On the 12th of October 1978, they have a party there. And at like 5 in the morning, Nancy is found with a knife in her. She's been stabbed.
American news reports the next morning revealed the horror of the night's events.
Today, police received an ambulance call at the Chelsea Hotel on West 23rd Street. In room 100, Sid Vicious was sitting on the bed near his picture. In the bathroom was the 20-year-old American girl he'd lived with for 2 years. Nancy Laura Spungen had been stabbed to death.
While the headlines of the time pointed the finger of blame firmly at Vicious, the debate about who killed Nancy has raged ever since and remains one of rock's biggest unsolved mysteries.
And what people on the inner circle and on the inside the punk scene think probably did happen is there was a big argument between the drugs dealer and Nancy over the drugs deal, and it all got a bit messy after that. Sid was in a totally drugged out state, had no idea what happened, and when he came round on the bed in the Chelsea Hotel, the room's covered in blood, all the money's missing, and Nancy's dead on the floor, and he can't remember what's happened. And they stick him into Rikers Island prison, which is the toughest prison in America.
On the 1st of February 1979, Vicious was released on bail.
He leaves Rikers Island. His mother is there, and there's a small party at the apartment he's staying in, and on the 2nd of February, Sid, he takes some more heroin and dies from it.
When Sid Vicious died, I remember it being on the cover of the newspaper. I was only 7. I was really shocked, and my mum was absolutely disgusted, like she was appalled.
Since 1979, Sid's life and premature death has been the subject of endless debate and speculation. 2009 saw him voted #1 in a public poll for the most controversial rock star who ever lived, beating off stiff competition from Ozzy Osbourne and Keith Richards.
I still can't get over how very young he was and how very sad he was. This was a kid who couldn't cope, and he met someone who couldn't cope either. So it was just the worst pairing, and he tried his best to get through that, and neither of them could.
Being a rock star is very good for some people, but for some people it's a complete car crash disaster, and Sid's #1 in that chart for sure.
The punk rock era may have come to a tragic conclusion, but its impact on British culture would live on.
That's got him.
Its DIY ethos inspired a new wave of alternative comedians, actors and writers. And in one terraced house in Newcastle upon Tyne, helped give birth to Britain's rudest, lewdest and most controversial comic.
Comics, when I was growing up, were cartoon characters doing silly things. And then came Viz. And Viz was naughty and rude, pushing the boundaries of what's OK to read in a comic. And I loved it. And I bought it every week. But it was the kind of comic that you hid under your bed.
The DNA of Viz comes from the late 70s do-it-yourself punk fanzines. Quickly and cheaply mass-produced by fans, for fans, they were photocopied rebellious pamphlets that cut out the mainstream rock media. And all that gave Newcastle native Chris Donald an idea.
Well, we first became interested in cartoons at school when we used to draw cartoons instead of doing the work that was set for us. Then we used to scribble little cartoons in the margins of our books, and then we started to put them together and staple little comic books together and circulate them around the classes.
I started drawing comic at school, and I doodled these little comics with about 10, 12 pages, and it was called The Fat Crusader, and it featured various friends from school and members of staff, and they were a bit violent.
And after we left school, we kept on drawing silly cartoons, and eventually we thought it might be an idea to do something with them.
And then we started thinking about actually doing a proper magazine.
That proper, or rather improper magazine was Viz. Chris needed help, so roped in brother Simon.
The inspiration for the cartoons would have been the Dandy and the Beano, basically, the stuff we read as kids, Valiant, Roy of the Rovers.
We took all those influences of like British kids comics, and we put into it what we knew of the real world, you know? So it was like the violence of the streets in the 70s and this world of like northern gritty humour.
Here's where it all started, Chris's bedroom. The first edition was published in December '79. It cost 20p and all 150 copies sold out within hours. Britain's most controversial comic was on its way.
The traditionally humorous magazine in Britain, basically it had always been the preserve of public schoolboys. Viz is coming from a completely different place. It's like punk rock comedy. It's comedy coming up from the street. So if you'd grown up like me, a kid on a council estate watching daytime TV when he was bunking off school, suddenly someone was satirising all the things you knew about, the cultural touchstones of your world.
Those groundbreaking early Viz comics included much-loved characters such as Roger Melly, the man on the telly, Billy the Fish, and the less well-known Paul Wicker, the tall vicar.
A kid kicks a football and it hits him on the back of the head, smack. Oh, no. And the kid apologises. Sorry, vicar. And the vicar says, my son, the Bible tells us, hitteth ye not the vicar with thine football on his bonce, lest he should rise up in anger and smite thee a mighty teeth-loosening blow, such as would knock the very bollocks off a mighty elephant, at which point he hits him on the back of the head and knocks his teeth out. This fucking...
I think the core of it was that it is anarchic, you know, so it's against any authority figure. Their whole thing was anybody that's bossing you about, they were just going to bring them down a peg, which is a very British thing, isn't it? I mean, in Britain, we don't like parkies. We don't like getting told what to do.
The parkie, the little old lady. Excuse me, why can't we go on the grass? 'Cause I'll stamp on your fucking dog otherwise. Plus, if that shite's in my park, I'll shite on you.
Jesus.
And then, of course, he pushes the litter stick through the vicar's head. Because...
From its humble origins, Viz became a publishing phenomenon.
Extensive tests have proved that to the ordinary man in the street, Viz comic is better fun than a jammy bun.
At its peak in the early 90s, it was selling over 1 million copies a week.
Unlike the gutter press, we don't print the truth. We print only what people want to read.
Making it one of the best-selling magazines in the country.
It has taken us years of scientific research and development to perfect our unique comic formula. And we think that the results speak for themselves.
But even when it became a national institution, it never shied away from controversy, which led in 1988 to the Sunday Mirror calling for it to be banned.
Basically, they complain about a joke. You've got a photo love story where two kids go to London and they're photographed. A man comes up to them with an ice cream tray and offers them a pop bottle full of heroin and says, "Do you want to buy some heroin, kids?" And they say, "No, thank you." Sunday Mirror got hold of that and they just took out of context one frame, a bloke offering 3-year-old kids heroin, and there was a ban. We had to be banned.
Heroin comic
ban.
Having survived tabloid fury, political correctness and cancel culture, Viz remains in rude good health and is still getting away with it, 40 years after this bedroom became a printing empire.
I think we've lowered standards in society generally.
It makes you worry. Society's gone down the pan, but I think we've probably played a part.
Yes, 1979 was a year of seismic change. Mrs. T got her hands on the keys to number 10.
A woman going to lead this country? It can't be true.
Then immediately dropped a huge bombshell in Parliament. The whole house went, what? And did the Queen really harbour a spy in Buckingham Palace?
This goes down as the ultimate cover-up.
Join us in sleazy, sexy, scandalous 79. A controversial year by any standards. Britain was in a political heavyweight dust-up.
You must have read the news. Once more, Britain's on the verge of industrial chaos.
In the red corner, Labour PM James Callaghan, while in the blue corner, the twin-set Tory terror was about to send controversy levels soaring.
Careful!
It was a winter of soaring energy prices.
Most people simply can't afford to keep their central heating on for much more than a couple of hours at a time.
Strikes in every sector.
At a mass meeting, strike leaders claimed almost total support.
Food shortages and high inflation. Sound familiar? Oh, and it was Brass Monkeys freezing.
The winter of discontent was a Shakespearean quote from Richard III.
Now is the winter of our discontent, made glorious summer by this son of York.
It was a pretty grim time for many. Unemployment was high. Almost everybody knew someone who was on strike, and everybody picked a side. You know, you were either with the unions or you were against them. You were on the picket lines or you were crossing them.
Motorists have been queuing at petrol stations, desperately trying to fill up with the little fuel that's left.
Ah, how history repeats. So we'd already had energy supply woes and high inflation when Labour came to power in 1974. Their response was to cut public spending and cap wages, which made the trade unions slightly vexed. So, between November 78 and February 79, 4.6 million workers downed tools, the largest walkout since the 1926 general strike.
There was rubbish piled up in Leicester Square.
Emergency sites are costing Westminster Council an additional £7,500 a week to run.
There were hospitals on strike, there were power cuts and the lights went out.
So here we are, just 2 weeks into 1979, with some of our towns and cities looking as though they're under siege.
And this was all grist to Margaret Thatcher's mill. She was saying we couldn't even bury the dead.
What we face is a threat to our whole way of life.
And so people, by the end of that period, felt that Labour had lost control, there was a real change in the groundswell of public opinion.
But where was Prime Minister Callaghan during Britain's freezing cold chaos? Oh, look, here he is in the famously not freezing Caribbean.
There was a summit meeting in Guadeloupe with Jim Callaghan, the UK Prime Minister, and the presidents of France and Germany and the United States. In this beautiful setting, the Caribbean.
But he has been at pains to emphasize that he's come to Guadeloupe to be working, even in the sunshine, on serious international business. This is Martin Bell in Guadeloupe.
We were on patrol with our cameras along the main beach there all the time in the hope that we might get a glimpse of him taking a dip in the Caribbean.
So there was a photograph of him in his swimming trunks while we were all freezing cold and there were strikes happening.
It was the contrast, I think, between this very romantic, almost fairy tale setting of Guadeloupe and the miseries going on at home.
When the betrunked and tanned Callaghan got his suit back on, the press whipped up the controversy.
Have you a reaction to the criticism that you shouldn't have been away from the country during these past 4 or 5 days?
I'm sure everybody would have liked to have been with me, but I don't think anybody except a few journalists are very jealous of it. I think that they feel that we've been working hard, as indeed we have. And you know, I actually swam. And I know that's the most exciting thing of the visit.
And he said something quite mild, like, I think if you look at it from the outside, things aren't quite as bad as they appear if you read the British papers.
I promise you that if you look at it from outside, and perhaps you're taking a rather parochial view at the moment, I don't think that other people in the world would share the view that there is mounting chaos.
Which was translated into crisis, what crisis? And it looked like he was a man out of touch, and he was sort of doomed from that moment onwards.
And people said, oh, you know, let's have somebody else. Let's give somebody else a go. And that somebody else was Margaret Thatcher.
On the 4th of May 1979, Maggie became Britain's first ever female Prime Minister. Cue more controversy.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister.
1979 was the start of 11 years of Margaret Thatcher at the top. And she was new and fresh and young and untried. And I think the fact that we'd elected a woman meant that the nation was ready for change, for something different.
I think it was a shock. I think everybody was taken aback. A woman going to lead this country, this Great Britain, can't be true.
I remember the first thing I went to with her, which was to meet people, military leaders in Brussels. And the question was, what will she do with her handbag? Can you imagine?
Crowds lining Downing Street, cheering, and she stood there and did the Francis of Assisi quote.
Where there is discord, may we bring harmony. Where there is error, may we bring truth. Where there is doubt, may we bring faith. And where there is despair, may we bring hope.
Where there is discord, may we bring harmony. Well, that was the opposite of what Mrs. Thatcher did. What harmony was, she created discord.
The Russians said that I was an Iron Lady. They were right. Britain needs an Iron Lady.
The Iron Lady set about reversing economic decline by pumping up privatisation and turbocharging the free market. Moves loved by some and loathed by others.
Margaret was very divisive and I think very controversial, personally. I think she was a piece of fresh air, and I think it's what we all needed, because I think we were fed up with what had gone before.
I don't think you realised in 1979 that we were entering a very, very different era, that we were entering the Thatcherite age. No one would have predicted that then. The early 80s was such a turbulent time of political unrest and miners' strikes and all of that stuff. I don't think in 1979 you got a sense that that was about to happen.
Most new prime ministers adopt a softly approach early in power, but Mrs. Thatcher wasn't most prime ministers. One example came in November 1979, when rumours of a fourth man in the infamous Cambridge spy ring reached fever pitch. The ring had passed state secrets to the Russians, and a parliamentary question about the mystery traitor's identity saw Maggie ride roughshod over convention, sending shockwaves through the establishment.
When a question was put to Margaret Thatcher about the person, without naming him, she stood up and she said, "I think the person that you mean is Sir Anthony Blunt." And the whole house went, "What?" She saw no reason to protect somebody who was an enemy of the country.
There was a sensation in the House of Commons just under an hour ago when the Prime Minister, Mrs. Thatcher, said that one of Britain's leading art experts was a self-confessed Russian spy.
The Anthony Blunt revelations really stunned the whole nation.
Immediately after the Prime Minister's statement, Buckingham Palace said that Sir Anthony had been stripped of his knighthood.
The idea that there was an importantly placed spy very close to the centres of power came as a huge shock to the British population.
This less than Fab Four were MI5 agents with communist leanings, passing information to the Soviet Union during the 30s and World War II. They wanted to help the fight against Nazi Germany, but sometimes the road to controversy is paved with good intentions.
Anthony Blunt was part of a very elite group up at Cambridge. They had sort of pro-Marxist, pro-communist beliefs, as was quite common among that set in Cambridge. So they were identified as potential recruits by Moscow, by the KGB.
All of them, in their different ways, had reached positions of some power or influence. Most notably, Blunt, who had become the keeper of the Queen's pictures.
Sir Anthony Blunt and Mr. Oliver Miller, Royal Art Curators, with a canvas from the collection of James II.
And they were, one by one, exposed.
He wasn't directly guilty of the death of anyone working for Britain, but he helped to create the climate of betrayal in the 30s, and yet he remained a free man.
When Sir Anthony Blunt, the uber-British keeper of the Queen's art collection, turned out to be a spy working for the communists, it was a huge shock to those of us whose experience of espionage was limited to 007.
When we think of spies, we think of James Bond, we think of people on jet skis, unzipping their wetsuits and stepping out into a tuxedo. Anthony Blunt was this rather sort of fey old man talking about Baroque art and the Victorian portraiture. The idea that this guy was a spy was completely against everything that we had seen in the movies.
Mr. Blunt revealed his secrets to a select few newsmen. While his lawyer wielded a stopwatch, Mr. Blunt explained in 10 minutes why he'd been spying for 40 years.
I was persuaded by Guy Burgess that I could best serve the cause of anti-fascism by joining him in his work for the Russians. This was a case of political conscience against loyalty to country. I chose conscience.
A good spy should remain in the shadows, but Blunt had become headline news. The Mirror called it the royal scandal of the century, while the People asked what everyone was secretly thinking. Did the Queen suspect or whisper it? Had she even helped cover up Tony's traitorous deeds?
The biggest question is, of course, who knew?
From around about 64, the Queen was fully aware that they had a KGB spy in their midst.
How was it that Anthony Blunt could remain an art advisor to the Queen until just a year ago?
There's a story that at one occasion, one of the private secretaries was walking a new quarry down the corridor and passed Blunt's office and said, "That's where our resident KGB spy works out of."
And then things got really James Bond when it was revealed Blunt had taken on a controversial mission 3 decades earlier for the royals. So were they protecting him in return?
At the end of the Second World War, he was asked to go over to Germany to locate and to extract letters that the royal family could have been thought to be embarrassing, particularly exchanges between the Nazi regime and King Edward VIII, the later Duke of Windsor. The palace didn't want the links with the Nazis becoming public because it would have been not only embarrassing for the royal family, but post-war extremely damaging and could have impacted upon, the defence of the realm.
So you do have regrets?
Oh, yeah. Bitter.
The regrettable truth about the Anthony Blunt affair is we will never actually know what happened. I do think we have a right to know the level of involvement of a man who would be king with Adolf Hitler. But this goes down as the ultimate cover-up with the whole establishment working together.
And if that wasn't shocking enough, wait till you see the outrageous 79 moments still to come, including controversial Kenny vandalising Wogan's wand.
And look at this silly mite. I mean, really, look at that.
That was Kenny Everett all over.
And the raunchy and risque dance troupe that Mary Whitehouse loved to hate.
The Hot Gossip was really tongue-in-cheek. We just saw how outrageous we could get.
Let's go back and gasp at the most controversial moments of 1979.
What do you lot say?
The Daily News was literally garbage.
Until the dispute is settled, the piles of rubbish will continue to grow.
We Brits badly needed a laugh. Enter a comedy legend who could have us grabbing our sides in mirth and picking up our phones in outrage. Controversial Ken.
Always over the top.
Spin it round as we take off.
It was hilarious, he was different.
We've got 2 more to go, and it's all up to Kenny and Lorraine. The bedpan, the nurse's book.
And look at this silly mite. I mean, really, look at that.
That's fantastic. The anarchy.
Cheap BBC equipment.
So strong.
And he doesn't stop. That was Kenny Everett all over.
You have cracked my wand.
Kenny had a rogues gallery of manic characters to call on.
Oh, yeah. Hey, bartender, let me have a screwdriver.
This was the Wild West of comedy, out at the very boundaries with no rules.
Hello, camera 4. I'm being taught a lesson by Lord Thames. He doesn't want me to touch his bloody cameras.
It was wild and wacky, and it played with the very conventions of television.
The series also featured a startling array of big-name guests, joining in with the surreal tomfoolery from a violent Leo Sayer.
Hello, I'm here in my front room talking to David Essex.
To a tiny David Essex.
And all the stars were happy to be sent up, to be made to look, in many ways, foolish.
Look at you, lily-livered mincer.
And there's Bowie with his violin.
I fought for people like you, and I never got one.
There could have been 1,001 responses to that particular sketch, but having David Bowie made it unique.
Chase me round and call me names, Aunt Sven. Take me!
Cuddly Ken started ruffling feathers on pirate radio in the 60s. When Radio 1 launched in 1967, the cheeky Scouser found himself a new home to make his own.
This is where I come alive. I'm a drag outside the building, but in here, the whole world is my oyster.
But that didn't last long. Everett couldn't help himself. In 1970, he was sacked after casting comedy aspersions on the Transport Minister's wife.
Mrs. Mary Peyton, wife of the Transport Minister, has passed her advanced driver's test first time.
She only passed because she crammed a fiver in his hand. I know these people.
What about Radio 1, Kenny?
Yeah, I'm down at Radio 1. Oh. Isn't it strange that I'm being filmed by one end of the BBC about being sacked by the other?
As radio said, clear off. Come on in, said TV, who knew controversy was a ratings magnet. Ken partnered with writer Barry Cryer and director David Mallet for the small screen, a playground for their joyfully immature sense of humour.
The whole thing about Kenny Everett was that he was the archetypal naughty schoolboy. And Barry Cryer, who was the writer, was also a naughty schoolboy. So the three of us really had quite a good time.
Hello. Got a personal problem? Have you stopped going to parties?
We just did what we thought was funny, which was basically tits and bums. Can we do tits and bums?
You just did.
Oh, good.
A choir boy with helium. Just another day at the office in Kenny's weird world.
Oh, you must try it.
But for every laugh, there was snooty disapproval from those who felt his risque humour went too far.
The boy stood in the chip shop, eating red-hot scallops. One fell down his trousers and scalded him on the ankle. Missed his bollocks completely.
Kenny Everett deliberately courted controversy. That was part of his sort of DNA, really.
Have a go, you'll love it.
I think he wore it as a badge of pride.
Hello, Angry of Mayfair here.
That whole character with the bowler hat and the umbrella.
What do you make of all this? This stupid Everett fellow with all this silly rock music, what?
That was just Ev sending up the Daily Mail reader who complained to Points of View about the Kenny Everett show.
They all need a jolly good flogging. Trouble is, I think they'd enjoy it.
He wanted that reaction. That's why he did it.
But emerging from the Midlands was Kenny's nemesis, in the form of a housewife who demanded that everything was done in the best possible taste.
7 o'clock in the morning, in the dewy fastness of her Worcestershire garden. It's the time of day Mary Whitehouse loves best. Already, since 6:30, she's enjoyed the morning prayer, written her diary, and kept trim with morning exercises. Now she's free to feed the pigeons.
Mary Whitehouse was a lady with blue rinsed hair and these glasses, sort of Dame Edna glasses, who formed a thing called the Viewers and Listeners Association. And it was like a sort of vicarage tea party. And the idea was that everything had to be nice. Everything had to look like Children's Hour in 1953. She started complaining vociferously about virtually everything we did.
But a White House wipeout of Ken's career was never on the cards, as all that controversy was just what the viewing figures ordered. And then Everett did what he did best, by making his sworn enemy part of the fun.
What a pleasant surprise. Up to now, the show's been almost acceptable, apart from one of two of the groups. And the dancers. There's dancers. When will they stop? And Lenny himself, that skin-tight shirt, hugging his biceps, turning the head of a poor innocent girl.
Her mammary glands were, in fact, balloons underneath her jersey. And he had a little drawing pin hidden there, and he would explode one.
It's got to stop! Pinky! Perky! Where are you?
Which I thought was hilarious, but various people didn't.
Mrs. Whitehouse's greatest vitriol was reserved not for Everett's rude sketches, but the glamorous dance troupe who appeared in between them.
Now, the dance troupe, Hot Gossip.
Hot Gossip steamed up our screens in '79, back when leotards were still considered the devil's own lycra. All way before the watershed.
Hot Gossip was really tongue-in-cheek. It really, really was. We just saw how outrageous we could get. And the more tongue-in-cheek we got with the whole thing, the more people thought we were being subversive or disgusting or filthy or all those sort of things. And yes, it was a naughty bit. So what? It's a naughty bit. But it was a joke.
A bit of context. In the late 70s, most light entertainment shows had some very lightly entertaining dance troupes, like The Young Generation, Pan's People, and Legs & Co.
We had a bit of Top of the Pops with Legs & Co. It was a little bit saucy, but mainly TV dancers were very clean-cut, shining jazz hands with very easy dancing.
But all that was to change thanks to this exciting new dance troupe who had middle-aged men across the country suddenly taking a keen interest in the nuances of modern choreography.
And back.
And the architect of all this controversy, none other than future Strictly judge Arlene Phillips.
Step. There.
I was teaching classes. I was a teacher and I worked on this style of dance which was sensual and quite sexy. I took the best students from my class and asked them if they'd like to join my group. I looked for dancers who weren't just pretty and smiling, but dancers who had something to say. And I think that was very different. I wanted to call it Hot Gossip because I wanted everyone to talk about it.
And they certainly did, Arlene. Hot Gossip's regular spot on the Kenny Everett show saw their raunchy routines performed to pulsating pop transported from the rehearsal room to prime-time ITV.
They looked like they had bought their clothes in a sex shop. They had suspenders on. There was kind of girl-on-girl action. There was black men and white women, things that you just did not see on television.
It wouldn't really be the done thing now, would it? So overtly sexual.
Let's not forget, it was on at like 7 o'clock in the evening or something. It was like as you were eating your dinner. There they were, you know, legs akimbo.
Now, then, the person responsible for all those shapes, those movements, is the group's choreographer, Arlene Phillips.
It certainly changed my life in a way that I did not expect. I was forever on TV with the group.
Can you teach anybody to dance?
Well, not always anybody, but I always have a damn good try.
Anywhere that I was being invited to actually wanted me to be controversial, but actually in real life, I was just like a bit of a homebody.
But when it came to controversy, Arlene let her choreography do the talking and helped take dance into a bold and provocative new era.
Hot Gossip definitely changed dance on television, without question. And certainly for a woman to be fearlessly sexy if they wanted to.
More hot pants and spandex still to come. Disco sparks a bitter backlash.
No! No, we can't have this. Death to disco!
And hair-raising controversy in the countryside.
It was like the gold rush for the UK.
The 70s saw pop shatter into polarised positions like never before. It pushed boundaries and challenged authority through punk, heavy metal and new wave. But in controversial 1979, even a fun and frivolous genre of music found itself at the centre of outrage.
Oh my goodness, disco. I do love disco. I love to sparkle.
Disco first started sparkling in New York and Philadelphia clubs in the early 70s. By the late 70s, everyone from London to Lagos was giving it some serious Travolta.
2, a 3, a 4, 1, a 2, 3, a 4.
And therefore no one could have predicted the coming storm.
I remember being a teenager and hearing like all of these energetic songs. Donna Summer, Night Fever, the Bee Gees, Chic. Cher, even Cher was like into some of the disco stuff.
It was about keying into that primal desire across all communities to dance, to move, to show your sexuality, to escape from daily life.
Ah, sensible T-shirts and corduroy. Here's the very British take on the glitterball virus.
Young people who queue to get in 6 nights a week have all caught a mysterious new disease. Disco fever.
Even OAPs went D-I-S-C-O.
Do you like all this new kind of dancing?
Oh, I like wiggling. So long as I don't want to wiggle.
But back in America, all that wanton wiggling had started a backlash that had little to do with music.
You know, they say, if you have privilege, equality feels like oppression. And rock people who had had rock stations and rock TV and rock everything just felt that these people dancing around was not their cup of tea. One reason was that disco was perceived, certainly in America, certainly in Chicago, which was the hotbed of this, as being black music at its roots that had now taken over white music, like rock bands. Secondly, there were all these gay people, and they weren't even hiding that they were gay. It's like, no, we can't have this. Death to disco.
The figure spearheading all this nonsense was Chicago DJ Steve Dahl, who decided a military-style rally was needed against the existential threat of dance music.
Steve Dahl was a bit like a sort of Howard Stern or James Whale for those older viewers.
He assembled a legion of anti-sequin stormtroopers under the provocative banner, Disco Sucks.
Disco sucks! Disco sucks! Disco sucks! We're here for the biggest anti-disco demolition in the world tonight!
He had some influence, due to family connections, with the Chicago White Sox baseball team. And he arranged somehow for between two Chicago White Sox games that there would be a Disco Sucks demonstration.
Well, listen, we took all the disco records that you brought tonight. We got them in a giant box, and we're going to blow them up real good.
You turned up with your 12-inch disco record, put them in a box in the middle of the playing field, and all hell broke loose.
The commentators there to watch a baseball game were left open-mouthed as a near riot broke out on the pitch.
One of the saddest sights I've ever seen in a ballpark in my life. This garbage of demolishing a record has turned into a fiasco.
There is this feeling that, you know, on the 6th of July 1979, disco died. That was it.
Disco actually went silent for a good 5-10 years, actually, after that. You could only really hear it in the clubs. It wasn't on regular airplay on the radios. It was the end of an era.
Disco's heyday may have ended, but it had sparked a musical revolution. Nightclub culture and music based around electronic beats were here to stay.
Really, disco won in the end because disco is still such a huge phenomenon. It sort of mutated and became dance.
Disco culture led to so many musical innovations, from EDM to house music to all of the culture that we know now as being electronic influenced music.
Disco, darling, will never die. That's why I wear glitter.
While Middle America was getting its knickers in a twist about disco, Britain's Green Welly Brigade was becoming embroiled in a scandal of equally unlikely origins. This is the unbelievable tale of how, after a 1979 book captured our imaginations, its golden promise was tarnished by a controversial twist.
On the face of it, it's just another lovely children's book, the story that mixes mystery, riddle, fantasy, and a touch of the fairy tale. It is also a set of clues for a real treasure hunt, a hunt to find a buried piece of jewellery worth thousands of pounds. In 1979, an actual treasure hunt started right across the country.
The Masquerade book was this beautifully illustrated treasure hunt book with a genuine treasure at the end of it.
This is the prize. A golden hair studded with precious stones.
There are all sorts of very difficult, cryptic clues hidden in the pictures, but it was really, really hard to solve. And the country went mad for this book.
400,000 copies sold in this country, 1.5 million copies worldwide.
It gripped the nation with a sort of fever that no one saw coming.
Masquerade was the brainchild of writer and illustrator Kit Williams, who was soon bombarded with letters from people who wanted to share their theories on the golden hair's location.
How long do you think it will be before someone finds your piece of treasure?
Might be a week, it might be 1,000 years, I don't know. I've no way of testing it.
As the book became a global smash, Britain was invaded by international golden hair hunters. Transatlantic Masquerade flights came complete with a free spade. Suddenly, hopeful potholes started appearing across the UK.
People from all over the world have been energetically digging up large chunks of England. A Swiss family, having decided, for reasons best known to themselves, that the hair must be buried in Cornwall, spent their life savings and very nearly their lives when they were cut off by the incoming tide in search of it.
I've had lots of people write to me and say that their husband has spent all their life savings, or the wife has just left the family and neglected it.
It was like the gold rush for the UK.
There was people walking around, you know, going across, like, the moors with shovels, trying to dig up stuff. I mean, that is the UK, really, in a nutshell, isn't it? We love treasure hunts and we love digging up stuff.
It's the puzzle that's already caught up thousands of ordinary people in the search for the treasure. James Parry is one. He deduced from tiny clues in the book that the jewel lay below common land in Ramsgate.
The local inhabitants, obviously a little bit disturbed about these loonies in the field, alerted the local constabulary. We had to tell them a story about how we were looking for UFOs, that we'd been alerted to UFO activity in the area. We thought that was a bit better than telling them that we were actually looking for golden rodents in the ground.
The hunt for the treasure was so big. I seem to remember there were loads of farmers getting incredibly cross.
Get off my land. Could have been debts, couldn't there?
Thankfully, murder was not on the crime sheet, but by 1982, conspiracy was. A mystery hare archaeologist had finally unearthed the prize in a field in Bedfordshire. The new puzzle was, who exactly had found it?
It soon became clear that the enormously complicated puzzle set by Kit Williams had been solved by an enormously complicated man. For a start, we still don't know his real name. He's insisted, for personal reasons and at great length, on not being identified.
And there was much excitement that the thing had been solved and this person had the treasure, but then there was a twist in the tale. And this is where the controversy came in, because this person was a fraud.
It seemed that the person who found it knew Kit Williams' ex-girlfriend and had somehow worked out through her where this golden hare was.
They had insider knowledge. So people felt cheated and people felt robbed that this wonderful treasure hunt had been ruined. Controversy raged for years.
Well done.
We can hit that wax off it.
The bunny-related bubble had burst and left fans of the book shocked. Devastated that his work of art made to provoke wonder had instead caused controversy, Kit Williams became a recluse. But over the years, Masquerade has regained its mystery and appeal.
I find it sad that something which was conceived as a kind of brilliant puzzle should have ended up in a bit of a mess.
But I think so many people love playing along that it can't have been all bad. I think, you know, it brought out the inner child in a lot of people.
But if that story brought out the inner child, our next part is definitely adults only. As we look back on the most scandalous, sleazy, and savagely brutal movies that caused all manner of controversy back in 1979.
Dame Helen Mirren and Boobies and Balls.
'79 was a bumper year at the movies, with intergalactic thrillers like Moonraker, Alien and Star Trek all boldly going to the top of the box office charts. But it was also a year when films grabbed the headlines for the wrong reasons, because there was movie-making controversy in the air. Take 10, for instance, on face value an oh-so-70s rom-com where Dudley Moore's straight-laced composer has a midlife crisis brought on by Bo Derek. The filmmakers thought they'd produced a sophisticated farce, but instead sparked a furious debate that's still causing arguments today.
10 really made a megastar out of Dudley Moore, who was, you know, relatively well known in the UK, but really made him an American leading man, surprisingly, really.
The film's plot hinged on one sun-drenched Mexican beach scene, an iconic moment that immediately caught the imagination of filmgoers.
My memories of the film was Bo Derek running down the beach and Dudley Moore running after her, just salivating.
And suddenly there was this kind of new goddess on the scene, and everybody just went, wow.
You just remember that image on the beach in the white sheer vest that you could see through and the beautiful cornrows. She was beautiful.
So who was this new blonde bombshell who was about to cause so much controversy? Well, Californian Bo Derek was no stranger to scandal. She'd started a relationship with 46-year-old filmmaker John Derek when just 16, which put her under the legal age of consent in the US. So the director divorced his wife, Linda Evans of Dynasty fame, and then avoided America's statutory rape charges by fleeing to Europe with Bo. After her breakthrough appearance in 10, it wasn't long before every style column in the world was offering advice on how to copy the Bo Derek look. This highly excited American news item is typical of how the new hair craze was reported.
While Bo Derek's total look is next to impossible to duplicate, her hairstyle in the movie 10 has sparked a whole new craze in hair fashion, and the idea seems to be catching on. Of course, the complete 10 hairdo isn't for everyone, and some experimenters say they've taken the coward's way out.
I wasn't sure if I could handle the attention that this hairdo attracts. I just wasn't that confident in myself, so I decided I would go halfway, and it's been a lot of fun.
As a kid, we just thought it was the Bo Derek look, but it was something that had been around for years.
And that was the whole problem. The style dates back to 3000 BC, and its name is a clue to where the controversy lies. Cornrows is an American colonial term which evokes the rows of corn picked by enslaved Africans. The braids were a way to reclaim their identity as an act of rebellion. So for many, calling it the 10 hairstyle totally ignored its origins.
All over the newspapers, all over magazines, how to get the Bo Derek look. Don't tell my great-grandmother that was the Bo Derek look, though, because that was her look 100 years before Bo Derek.
And this kind of reporting only made people angrier.
And for years, black women have been using the style. But hairdressers say Bo Derek was just what the hairdo needed to be rediscovered.
The fact of the matter is that it made black people feel as though we were invisible. There was the perception that until a white person did it, it didn't exist. I was so irritated.
You weren't the only one, David. It wasn't long before a braided backlash was brewing in the media.
It really, really rubbed the black community the wrong way, totally, in America. We even had a movement against it.
But look who didn't learn from history. Yes, in 2018, Kim Kardashian stirred up the media controversy all over again with an Instagram post, almost like she wanted the attention.
When Kim Kardashian wore the cornrow braids, and Kim Kardashian gave credit to Bo Derek. We're not saying don't wear it, we're saying when you wear it, give credit where credit is due. Don't take what we have worked hard for, take what, a lot of black people have helped to enhance into popular culture and claim it as yours. We don't have time for that. So you will get called out for that. That, to me, is cultural appropriation.
But while 10 had found itself embroiled in a row it never saw coming, one outrageously salacious movie that year set out to deliberately cause as much shock and controversy as possible. Set in ancient Rome, if weird sex, gore, and nudity were your bag... Caligula was your film, and it wasn't like the cast were Z-listers.
Caligula had an amazing cast doing their absolute best to evoke the heady days of the Roman Empire. It included Malcolm McDowell, John Gielgud.
Tell me, how is the Emperor? Old, like me?
Peter O'Toole.
You see, Caligula, I'm insulted to my face.
And Helen Mirren.
She's the most promiscuous woman in Rome.
Perfect.
Caligula was a famously depraved ruler.
Arrest Gemellus for treason.
Guards, take him away.
And so we would learn a lot about the ways the Romans lived when they were at their absolute worst. And it became notorious.
Caligula was conceived by famed screenwriter Gore Vidal as a decadent historical epic. But that all changed once the film went into production. Its makers were soon at loggerheads over what kind of movie they were actually creating.
It's that classic battle, really, between art and commerce, because you had Bob Guccione producing it, the man who founded Penthouse, wanting to make a big, expensive, but ultimately erotic movie. And then you had Gore Vidal, you had Tinto Brass, the writer and the director, wanting to make a different kind of film, wanting to make something artier. And ultimately all of them falling out because they couldn't agree on which direction to take.
Realising porn baron Guccione was turning his precious script into something more top shelf, Vidal quit soon after filming began. And after Guccione took control of the editing process, director Brass followed suit. With free rein to do things his way, Guccione drafted in some new cast members, none of whom are likely to have trod the boards at the Royal Shakespeare Company. This fascinating behind-the-scenes footage captures the moment the Penthouse Pets arrived on set, offering insight into Guccione's not exactly Spielberg-esque vision.
A particularly good reason for doing this film was because it gave us, as a company, a terrific advantage. And that was of using the beautiful girls that we portray in the magazine, the Penthouse Pets.
Oh, 1, 2, 3.
This gave us, I think, an advantage over almost anybody else who would be making that kind of a film.
Bob Guccione thought that Caligula wasn't quite naughty enough, so he shot a sort of Caligula-like porn film as a sidebar to the main production and then just wove the footage together.
We can't show that footage. Just imagine the sleaziest thing you've seen and times it by 10. That's all you need to know.
It was a hardcore porn film being made under the subterfuge of a Roman classical drama. But it was a porno. The versions where you see quite a lot.
Guccione himself always strongly refuted the notion that Caligula was porn.
There are scenes in Caligula that will shock, surprise, and no doubt offend a great number of people. This is not pornography, this is paganography. This is the morality of pagan Rome.
You just keep telling yourself that, Bob. The cast only saw the finished cut much later. And if the actor you've got playing Caligula is shocked, you have a problem.
The cast really were betrayed. Betrayed, but it's a betrayal, I think, of the talents involved.
Could you have walked off without...
No, you can't. I signed a contract.
Did you give Bob Guccione a piece of your mind?
Bob Guccione knows how I feel about him and the film. He's not exactly my best friend, I'll put it that way. If anybody is thinking of going to it in this audience tonight, I would advise them not to.
Everybody was offended. This footage shows religious protesters letting rip at cinema-goers who just wanted a nice night out, watching Romans having an orgy.
We're protesting Caligula because it is the first hardcore porn film to run in a commercial theater in Vancouver.
Read what it says on the window. They don't lie about it. It teaches violence, rape, perversion, bestiality, and torture.
If you haven't seen the movie, you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, Sunday night, and I thought it was all right.
Well, of course you would think it's
all right. So go see it and then come out here and tell me about it.
When the film reached British shores, it was seized by customs under obscenity and indecency laws. It was finally released after the British Board of Film Classification cut out some of the most shocking bits.
I saw Caligula on a midnight showing at the ABC cinema in Derby. But it was almost like a comedy film. It was that horrific. I mean, it was almost like something that Carry On meets Hammer Horror with extra gore. So there was like this one bit where I had like heads buried up to the neck in the arena, and like this weird machine with blades on that was going and chopping their heads off, and you're going, ooh. And I was very interested in Roman history, and I don't remember reading about that.
What? The Roman head-chopping combine harvester didn't exist? OK, it may have taken liberties with the truth, but it was still a lavish production.
It's gained cult status just because of the stories surrounding it.
Action! This behind-the-scenes footage shows a fabulously expensive replica of Caligula's pleasure boat.
At the time, it wasn't critically well received or didn't do well financially, but it's such a story of ego, big dreams that go horribly wrong, so it's become the stuff of legend.
Let's carry out a controlled experiment to see if a 1979 movie can still shock today.
As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, we have gone to great expense to bring you the finest flesh in our empire.
I'm actually nervous. I'm not sure I want to see this.
Only 5 gold pieces.
We've enlisted the normally shock-proof Tia Coffee once more
I'm scared. Like, I am genuinely actually scared.
to find out if Caligula can still traumatize viewers 4 decades on.
We sail for Britain!
So, Tia, what do you make of it so far?
It's because Helen Mirren's in it and she's an icon. So currently I feel like I'm watching porn with my dad or something.
Any thoughts on the plot?
Is this a sex boat?
Yes, sorry.
They're on a sex boat.
Well, again, sorry.
This doesn't feel appropriate. It's unsettling.
That's one word.
What just happened?
You tell us.
Dame Helen Mirren and boobies and balls.
And that's your pithy 7-word review right there. Our final controversial flick of '79 was a world away from Dame Helen.
But this is the daddy. The hard case.
Originally, it was going to be a television play, which then got made, but the BBC pulled because they thought it was too violent and too, difficult for people to watch. The kids in the ball stall, have to be tough to survive. And the people who are supposedly looking after them, the screws and...
The fuck who the daddy is. And the daddy is like kind of the alpha male dominant boy who is afforded certain privileges by the management of the institution. The story really is about the Ray Winstone character's rise to this position.
That sounded pretty definitive. But while the violence offended some, most agreed that the young actors were superb.
The kids that were in that film were from their head crushed in by some copper or some screw in the jail.
Come on, you lot!
If trigger warnings had been about in autumn '79, they'd have warned us Scum featured suicide, graphic violence, racism and gang rape.
It's the sort of film that might well act as a deterrent to potential teenage delinquents. But because it won't now be shown on TV and because the film version contains more than enough violence to earn its X certificate, these are exactly the kind of people who won't be able to see it.
But while not everyone could see it or might even want to, Scum's controversial influence spread out of the cinema and into a debate on how young offenders should be incarcerated.
We didn't necessarily know what was going on behind the doors of these ball stalls. There was a lot of bullying going on.
A big campaign was launched to try and change the way that these young offenders are dealt with. At the moment, say the people who are running this campaign, the idea of locking up teenagers in what are called detention centres or Borstals just isn't working.
In 1982, the brutal Borstal system was finally abolished, replaced by youth custody centres, proving that sometimes a bit of controversy really can be a force for good.
Perhaps the film can take a bit of credit for bringing about the demise of that system and its totally institutionalized violence.
If you or someone you know has been affected by any of the issues raised in tonight's programme, please go to channel5.com/helplines for information and support.